And somewhere along the line, the firefighter handed me off to a New York police officer. The thing that struck me, though, was that I didn't see many wounded people in the street, which led me to believe, at least where I was by the Trade Center, they had never even gotten out of the building. I thought I was going to die. It is as close as I've ever come as a reporter to thinking I was going to die.
Carol Maureen, who was downtown early this morning when this catastrophe hit. I mistakenly said she was down now, which is what I thought, but this was a replay of a videotape interview we did with Carol Maureen earlier in the day. You know, it's impossible not to compare this coordinated air attack, this undeclared act of war, with the attack on Pearl Harbor almost 60 years ago, the Japanese sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. And it's just as clear as can be that December 7th, 1941 will be forever remembered as, in President Franklin Roosevelt's phrase, a day of infamy. But so too will now September 11th, 2001, go down in American history as a day of infamy. At this moment, you may want to recall that Pearl Harbor was a disaster that brought the United States of America together and propelled it to victory. A thought to ponder as we go through this afternoon. Now, around the world, there have been some expressions of solidarity with the United States. Tony Blair, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, made an eloquent short talk to that effect earlier in the day. Others among the United States allies in the world of freedom and democracy around the world have expressed similar sentiments. There have been some expressions of celebration. Palestinians on the West Bank were said to shoot their weapons in the air today in what was said to be a celebration. Now, what we're waiting on right now is a briefing at the U.S. Defense Department. A Pentagon briefing is expected to brief shortly, and as mentioned earlier, a senior official of the FBI is also expected to brief very shortly. Admiral Craig Quigley will be briefing at the Pentagon. Now, if you're saying to yourself, well, where is President Bush? The answer is we don't absolutely know. He was last reported to be at the air base in Nebraska getting a briefing. He had gone there from Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana outside Shreveport. He had gone there from being in Florida earlier in the morning. And as we await the beginning of one of these briefings, you're looking at scenes. This is a live picture in Manhattan. Perhaps, I think the world's best-known skyline with the Empire State Building off to the mid-left in your screen with that high, looks like a stick, little known, that was supposed to be a dirigible landing place high atop the Empire State Building. That's what it was designed to be, but no dirigible was ever able to get in there. And in that place, the Empire State Building, one of the landmarks of our country, recognizable all over the world. This is what the skyline, the New York skyline, looks like today. The World Trade Center's gone, both of them. Yes, devastatingly gone, right to the ground. Both of them crumbled, each after having been hit separately by hijacked American airliners. And we may be able to show you what the New York City skyline looked like. Them are gone. The former foreign minister of Israel, Shimon Peres, is in Jerusalem. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Minister. I appreciate very much your doing this. Do you think this terrorist attack on the United States is because of its close friendship with Israel?
An attack on the United States. Attack civilization and bring all of us back to the jungle. And I think we have to do whatever we can not to permit another war with terrible consequences to be spread over. May I say that each of us feel today like an American. Our heart is with the families, with the victims. It's full of pain. But we know the United States is a great and a strong country, and as you've won so many wars and suffered so many agonies, again, you and us and all of us will emerge stronger and more hopeful. I want to say that we have to draw consequences, all of us. We have had, or we are having armies against enemies that practically do not exist, but we have dangers without strategies and without armies. The most important consequence today is to develop a strategy against terror. It can happen every place, everywhere, and cause untold of damage and victims and blood and tears. And the time came for all of us to get ourselves organized. By the way, we send our own rescue team, which is already on the way to the United States. We shall do whatever we can to stand on the United States, which is leading the world, defending democracy, and enabling all of us to remain as a civilized community.
Shimon Peres, you know our country, my country, well. And you know that there are any number of people in the United States who believe these bombings today are a direct result of U.S. support for Israel over the years in the Middle East. To those people who say that, what say you?
Well, you know, there were other acts of terror that has nothing to do with Israel, including in the United States itself. Terror is a terrible way of destruction and killing. And you have all over the world acts of terrors that has nothing to do with Israel. Terror
Mr. Peres,
is a
if you'll
new
excuse
phenomenon.
me a moment, I know that you will understand this. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but Karen Hughes, the principal assistant to President Bush, has begun to brief, and we pick her up in progress.
Evacuated for security reasons and to protect our workers. Your federal government continues to function effectively. We have a federal emergency response plan, and at President Bush's direction, we are implementing it. We began to implement it immediately after the first attack in New York this morning. We contacted American forces and embassies throughout the world and placed them on high alert. The United States Secret Service immediately secured the President, the Vice President, and the Speaker of the House, and they are all safe. They have also secured members of the National Security Team, the President's Cabinet, and senior staff. As you know, President Bush was in Sarasota, Florida, when the first attack occurred this morning. Air Force One has now landed at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska, and the President is in a secure location. He is in continuous communication with the Vice President and key members of his Cabinet and National Security Team. Vice President Cheney and our National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, are in a secure facility at the White House. I have just come from there. The Secretary of Transportation and other members of our White House senior staff are gathered at a command center there, and we are coordinating with other branches of our federal government. The Secretary of Defense remains at the Pentagon, and the Secretary of State is en route back to Washington from his trip to South America. President Bush is conducting a meeting of the National Security Council as we speak. They are meeting President Bush from his location and other members from different locations in Washington and other locations. As many of you have been reporting, the Federal Aviation Administration ordered all airports closed, and all planes which were in the air were directed to land at the nearest airport. International flights were diverted to alternate locations outside of the United States. Transportation Secretary Mineta has directed the Federal Aviation Administration to suspend operations until at least noon tomorrow. So no airline flights will operate until at least then, and until the FAA announces that operations will be resumed. Secretary Mineta has also issued orders controlling the movement of all vessels in United States navigable waters. The Federal Emergency Management Agency has activated 8 urban search and rescue task forces in New York, and 4 of these highly trained teams are at work here in Washington at the Pentagon. Every federal agency has implemented continuity of operations plans to make sure the government continues to function effectively. While the markets closed today because of the situation in Manhattan, the United States financial system has continued to operate. Banks have been open all day. The Federal Reserve has operated regularly and continuously. The Department of Health and Human Services has mobilized medical personnel and supplies to provide help to local authorities who are working so diligently to respond and try to help the victims of these terrible attacks. President Bush has committed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to identify and bring to swift justice.
Rug pulled out from under us that I think we all feel our safety net has got a big hole in it.
That woman spoke for many, many people downtown who also were kind of burning with anger towards the end, trying to find out where to direct that anger. At around 3 o'clock, we're going to have a briefing from city officials, that's the schedule anyway, to see when some of the public buildings will be reopened. Live in downtown Los Angeles, Mark Coogan, CBS 2 News.
Mark, thanks very much. And it is important to note that nothing has taken place here in Los Angeles, no terrorist activity at all. But everybody is on a heightened state of alert and readiness, not only in Southern California, but across the country. We'll see you again at 2:25 with a special local update for you. And if you are heading out and about, remember, lots of things have been canceled, lots of things have been closed. Do please call ahead before you head out.
We'll also be back at 3 o'clock with a special half-hour newscast. As you heard, Mark is telling us that there's going to be some announcements from downtown at that point. We may have something to tell you from the governor. The latest at 2:25 and then again at 3 o'clock from Jonathan Elias and Ann Martin. We'll see you soon.
See you then.
You've been watching a CBS 2 News special report.
More possible attacks. That's one reason that air traffic was shut down, a virtual lockdown of air traffic in the United States today. The FAA does not expect that to be any relief on that until at least noon tomorrow. That was the last available information from the FAA. We're also told that the financial markets, the stock markets, will be closed tomorrow. I don't know that we've had official triple confirmation of that, but I believe the most reliable information is the markets closed down today, and the most reliable information is that they will be closed tomorrow. That the investigation of who's responsible for these dastardly acts today is already underway, but the first order of business is to tend to the wounded.
Rush hour peak, as it's called, is about the busiest time. So if you were going to try to penetrate security on a number of fronts, one might say that that is a perfect time where the system is at its most vulnerable. A couple of other points. The two airlines involved are the two largest airlines in this country, making them obviously two symbols of American power, United Airlines and American Airlines. And all four planes that were used by the terrorists were filled to capacity with fuel. These were cross-country flights. That was no accident. When these planes are fueled to go from points on the East Coast to the West Coast, they carry tens of thousands of gallons of fuel. What that means is they literally are flying bombs when these planes, heavily laden with...
And this is Ann Martin and Jonathan Elias once again in Los Angeles. We've been waiting for Governor Gray Davis to speak. We believe he is about to. Let's